Why are used cars better than brand new ones? Could it be scratched rims and damaged tires? Old outdated designs? Or maybe obsolete technology? In fact, it's none of those. There's 8 major reasons why you would strongly consider buying a used car over brand new, especially here in 2025. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first reason, as of April 2nd, 2025, we're about to get smacked down with some major tariffs. That's right, vehicles that are all imported into the United States are about to be smacked with at least a 25% tariff across the board. Does that mean the vehicles are going to be costing 25% more? Not necessarily. We could see increases of 5, 10, 15, 20% transferred right across, but it's going to cost you a lot more money than it did even a few short weeks and months ago. Now, a lot of import car manufacturers, Toyota, Lexus, we're hearing even from Europe, Volkswagen, Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, you name it. A lot of those vehicles have already landed on North American soil and may not be subjected to a lot of these tariffs. But unfortunately, if you're buying a vehicle, you're special ordering it, or if you're buying it, you're waiting and you're looking around and you're not sure what you're going to buy yet. The bottom line is, as you take more and more time to decide what that new vehicle is, there's a high probability of some of those tariffs being transferred to some of those new vehicles. And sure, while some of the import manufacturers, for example, that are created in Germany, like BMW, some of their vehicles are built on US soil, or Mercedes built on American soil, you may or may not be subjected to that. But the bottom line is, this application of tariffs across the board, these OEMs are looking to absolutely blend out their losses. They're going to pass those costs down to the consumer. They're not going to eat it. So if you're looking at buying a vehicle in the next year to 2 to 3 years, and depending on how long these tariffs are going on for, this could cost you a significant amount of money buying a brand new vehicle. Even Ferrari's openly admitted that they're likely to apply a 10% tariff almost immediately on certain models. But what you're looking at here is a whole lineup of great used vehicles. A lot of them are late model. A lot of them maybe even have CPO warranties, and certainly a lot of them have low miles. And even more so, a lot of them are reliable vehicles inherently. The beauty with that is you can get yourself a late model vehicle that's reliable, low Ks, and still not have to pay any of those duties or tariffs. The second reason why it's better to buy a used car over brand new is, well, let's face it, you look at these two cars and it's all about the track record. This brand here is known for high levels of reliability, but we've known that over years and years and years of proof. This brand, a lot of people like, but the reliability isn't quite there. The cost of servicing is a little higher, and certainly the terms found on road dead come for a good reason. So ultimately, how do you know that a vehicle is good and worth buying? Because we know, and we've learned from years, that a lot of these used vehicles, what they have a particular drivetrain, maybe for example a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter, maybe a naturally aspirated 2 liter, maybe a naturally aspirated V6 that's had strong reputation for reliability. And then all of a sudden the same manufacturer comes out with something brand new that comes with a turbocharged 2.4 liter 4-cylinder engine instead of the previous very reliable V6. Well, how do you think that reliability is going to go? You don't know. See, that's the problem. Even with a reputable manufacturer, brand new cars are never proven until they're proven. So buying a used vehicle, you often have the home rink advantage in understanding the models, the engines, the transmissions, and the problem areas that may or may not exist with a particular vehicle. If that vehicle just comes out this year, it's fresh and shiny, new technology, brand new engine, brand new V6. We've heard of Lexus and some of their new 3.4 liter V6s, that V35A, absolutely crazy. They're failing at an alarming rate. In the new Tundra, as well as the LX600 Lexus, those vehicles and those engines are highly problematic right now, and they're already 3 or 4 years in. So ultimately, by knowing what you have and shopping for the used vehicles, we've already learned where the problem areas are, and it gives you the availability to go out there shopping and armed with the information that you know for that specific vehicle. How else would you know that this vehicle will blow an engine at 100,000 miles, or it starts burning oil at 60, 70,000 miles? How do you know? Well, we know from history, the EA888 engine in Audis and Volkswagens aren't necessarily their most reliable piece. Toyota, they've been proven some of their NA engines are very reliable, but we learn that over time, and shopping for a used vehicle is really the only way that we know what we've seen in the past. We can't predict the future, but if you buy a brand new vehicle that's been untried and untested, all bets are off. The third reason boils down to depreciation. Well, it's always wonderful to have a brand new vehicle, shiny, nobody farted in the seats, and they're clearly got full warranty and no scratches or dents. So there's definitely some advantages, but the downside is sheer depreciation. That's right, they say in some cases you drive a vehicle off the lot and you've immediately lost 15 to 20% of the value. But by buying yourself a used vehicle, you're quite often getting the mass majority of the service life left. You maybe go out, buy a 3-year-old vehicle like this, maybe it only has 30,000 miles on it, you're still gonna run it to 250,000 miles if it's been looked after. And there are huge benefits in that vehicle. You're gonna get 85, 90, 90% of its service life left, but you're also gonna be down in that depreciation curve. As I said, 20% gone in the first, as soon as you drive it off the lot. This vehicle, if it's 3 years old, it might only cost you about 70 or 65% of its original value, but you're getting most of the life out of that vehicle yet. So buying a used vehicle offers a huge savings on depreciation. You're usually getting it in at the 70, 60% price range, and it offers up a huge savings. You might save yourself thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, even when you're talking about a vehicle like an Escalade, where they're one of the hardest depreciating vehicles in the industry. And I shared that over on my other channel, Easy Car Buying, where these vehicles are one of the worst for depreciation. You could literally lose over 60% of its value in 5 short years. So if you happen to stumble across one with low mileage, it's been well looked after by a little old man who goes to the golf course every Sunday and that's the only time he uses it, that could be a steal of a deal, and you're getting into a great vehicle for a massive savings of tens of thousands of dollars. Another reason why it's almost better to get yourself a used vehicle instead of a brand new one like this is a lot of these used vehicles will have a much lower value for your insurance costs. I mean, you go out and you buy this vehicle, say 5 years old, 4 years old, and all of a sudden you have to go and sign up for your insurance. The insurance companies are going to more or less insure you for the value of that vehicle. And because now that vehicle is only worth 65, 70% of its original value, you're likely going to see some savings in there. The overall replacement cost is going to be less, so there's a good probability you're likely going to spend less money on your insurance costs. As well, when you have a used vehicle, you're a little less concerned about putting the full protection on. You may elect to not put certain coverages on. You may not care about the glass coverage because sometimes you have the option, especially if it's a lower cost used vehicle. When you buy a brand new vehicle and you have high car payments, the insurance companies and the banks are like this, and ultimately the banks want to protect their investment and make sure that in the event of an incident you're going to be covered, because gap insurance is a feature that is offered by insurance companies, but ultimately the insurance company doesn't like to pay money out and the banks certainly don't like to lose any money. So the banks want to make sure that they are covered in its entirety. If it's a cheaper, older used vehicle, they don't care as much, and likely they're not also going to enforce that you have the entire full coverage package for your insurance. Another reason a used car buy makes way more sense than buying brand new is this 2020 Toyota 4Runner. Great vehicle, low mileage, ultra reliable, and everybody knows its reputation for durability. But the beauty with this vehicle is when you come in and you deal or wheel, whether it's a private deal or whether you're negotiating at a car dealership to get this vehicle, ultimately the final price is the final price. You can negotiate, oh, maybe they've got luggage racks or extra tires, but those are all negotiable extra add-ons that were maybe purchased by the original owner. You don't need to buy it, you don't need it, it's optional, and certainly not something that you need to even worry about. The problem is when you're buying a brand new vehicle, like this beautiful new Lexus GX 550 right here, they're great, but you have to pay a lot of extra fees. You have tire levies, surcharges, you may have state taxes, you may have all kinds of taxes, many of which are now exempt once you buy a used vehicle. But these brand new vehicles, you have to pay all these extra surcharges. Freight and PDI are all coming at an extra cost, and that gets tacked on to the bottom of the invoice. I saw an invoice recently for a brand new Ferrari, and because that vehicle comes from Italy, they literally tack on $10,000 to get that vehicle from Italy over to North American soil. 10 grand to get that car over here. So there's no question when you buy a used vehicle, there's all those extra surcharges, taxes, and fees that you don't have to worry about when you buy them used. Another great reason to get yourself a used vehicle versus brand new is the initial high cost. Of course, there's this gorgeous new Lexus IS that we're looking at right here, and you'll notice it has all kinds of beautiful detailing, LED headlights, the gorgeous piano gloss finishing, alloy gunmetal wheels, F Sport package, LC500 mirrors, Okay, this one doesn't have a sunroof, but it does give you a lot of other nice features, like this beautiful little wing on here on this F Sport package, this lighting bar across the back. This is the IS300. Also, of course, as you see down the flares, this is the newest version of the Lexus IS. But the beauty is this car's been out for a while. And when this car initially came out a few years ago in this restyle, it was less money than it is today. That's right, MSRP prices for almost every vehicle has gone up. So buying a used vehicle and its natural depreciation curve are more indication to where the price started. When it was new, it drops down, and now you're at, of course, a lower overall K offset. So generally, your used car depreciation rate takes that vehicle that was, say, 5 years old down to a place that's lower now than a vehicle that's purchased today. Fast forwarding 5 years down the road, you're likely going to have a cheaper car, lower cost, and certainly more affordable, because a 5-year-old car was much cheaper back then than the same replacement is today. One of the biggest benefits of buying a used vehicle, we've seen car prices rise so much in the recent last 4 or 5 years. The brand new cost of an entry-level vehicle has gone up. You can no longer pretty much get a vehicle brand new for $20,000. There's a couple that are in and around that, but by the time you put on your fees and taxes, you're over $20,000. The affordable car is officially waved bye-bye, because we've seen car prices rise in the last 5 years by anywhere from 25 to 45%. Usually about a third is the increase that we've seen. Quite often, a lot of those affordable vehicles yesterday aren't quite so affordable. I mean, after all, we have this tiny little Hyundai Venue, one of the cheapest cars on the market. Brand new is over $20,000. And as you look right here, this one's a 2021, and they're featuring this for 19 grand right here. Now, granted, that's Canadian dollars. This vehicle was probably closer to $26,000, $27,000 when it was brand new. But the point is, you can no longer get an affordable brand new vehicle. So buying slightly used allows you to get into something more affordable. Instead of spending 30, now you can get something late model that's almost the same with low Ks for 20 grand. A vehicle like this, you're probably going to save, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 just by getting into it 2 or 3 years in. Even a Kia like this, you're going to save some money. And Toyotas, we know that there are some savings. That said, a lot of these late model Toyotas, we're seeing that the dealers are still putting the screws to customers. With low inventory on their lots, they're basically trying to tell people, if you want this 2-year-old Toyota, you're going to pay just about brand new prices. So with the exception of a few anomalies like Toyota, most car brands are subject to standard depreciation, and you're likely going to save a ton of money. And you have the flexibility of varying your different prices and affordability budgets, because ultimately, when you buy new, there's no options. You're stuck. Here's base sticker, here's where the cheapest car is, and it only goes up from there. But when you buy used, you can vary that. How old? You can tolerate a few higher miles, maybe the condition, maybe the type of vehicle, and you can adjust your budget accordingly, because ultimately you can buy used cars that still run for as little as $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. It's your choice. You just have to be thrifty, you have to get smarter, and as certainly once you get into the cheaper, lower cost vehicles, you have to understand that there may be some costs. You might have to put in some brakes, maybe put some tires on it, do a good pre-purchase inspection if you're putting some money in there. But ultimately, you're saving a huge amount of money and able to control the cost that you put out for that used vehicle. You sure can't do that with a new vehicle. And another huge benefit to buying slightly used, and you'll definitely appreciate that, if you do want to spend a significant money and you still want to spend and get into something more upscale, here, this is a classic example, this Lexus IS300 as we see here. You can get into a vehicle brand new, let's say hypothetically, and spend the full beans to get that vehicle, but it's a lower trim level. It might only come with a turbo 4-cylinder engine, might have a few less features, but ultimately for the cost of brand new and lower version trim of that vehicle, you can get yourself a higher trim level vehicle, slightly used. For similar money, you can get a much higher trim level. For example, a beautiful F Sport IS350, which features the naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6, sounds better, goes better, and will certainly have a better holding value in terms of value retention, less depreciation, and it's much more sought after. So you can step up the trim levels in your cost. Even if you want to spend a significant amount of money, it's less about spending the money, it's more about the value proposition. You can certainly get yourself a better vehicle, higher trim level, if you just buy something slightly used versus the brand new version of it and have to actually trim down. It certainly makes a lot of sense to look at something slightly used with good Ks and as well owned by a previous loving owner. And with all of that said, everybody, be sure to check out that video. Some of the goofiest vehicles and not sure why they're even made. Hope to see each and every one of you all on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.